Good morning.
It is a good morning.
First, I would like to express appreciation for every thought of your teachings and for everything I was able to implement in my life.
It's fun, isn't it, to find resonance with who you are and what you really know.
Yes.
And that's what's going on.
The second thing I would like to say is that I volunteered this morning here, and there is nothing in my life which gives me more satisfaction than volunteering. I'm a global volunteer. I want to travel the world and volunteer wherever I can. And this morning it was a little bit of discord because I'm not an early riser. And I had to get up in the morning at 5 to get here in time to volunteer, which I did. But the acceleration of the feeling of volunteering overrides the discomfort of having to get up early. I'm like the dog who sticks out his head and doesn't worry about the bugs getting in his eyes. I just love the feeling, and I'm here for the feeling.
It's an important thing that you're talking about, and we want to run with it for a little bit because it is so important. Because we're talking about momentum, and we're talking about the trajectory that happens as a result of momentum. And so, can you feel how, because you've already acknowledged that you like to be helpful, so that's a trajectory that you've already established. And you've been listening to us for a while, and you've already established that you find resonance here. So that's a strong trajectory. There's a strong momentum. The path of least resistance is already really moving along in a nice way. And while you also acknowledge that you are not an early riser, so that's a contradictory thought that could take you off of the trajectory, because this trajectory is so strong, not only because you like to volunteer, not only because you like to be of value, but because you have found value here, because you want to play with what's going on here. So the trajectory of all of that, the path of least resistance, was strong enough that even though there was the potential of you diverging on a path of I'm not an early riser, this trajectory was so strong and the momentum was so strong that it pulled you right along. And so there was little or no resistance within you. Can you kind of feel what we're getting at? Where if you've practiced contradictory thoughts, I want it but, and you have not allowed this trajectory, then you're having a rough ride because you're getting up even though you don't want to get up. In other words, that's what a lot of people's trajectory is about. They're just resistant to the idea of getting out of bed at all. And so they resent anything that's going to call them to do anything else. We just think that is a really good conversation to have in the middle of everything that we've got going on here, because you want to ask yourself, what is the path of least resistance that I've got going on? And the path of least resistance really is the same thing as saying, what is the trajectory, which is the same thing as saying, what is law of attraction's momentum in response to what I've been thinking? What is the likely thing for me to do? And the bigger question is the trajectory that I've got going in sync with who So, now let's talk about this. We have to go here. So, we've been saying to you, you've been listening to us for a while, yes? That you were source energy before you came into this physical body, and that a part of you came into this physical body. Think about the trajectory of that. Think about who you are and who you were coming into this physical body. Think about the fun that you intended and the value that you intended and the happily ever after that you intended. Think about the power with which you this physical body. So that's who you are. So now imagine yourself as a child. And that's still the momentum that you've got going. That's the trajectory that you've got going. And there you are. You're moving right along on that. And someone, maybe a teacher, maybe a parent, doesn't matter who it was, says to you, you are not a good person. And you listen to them. Now feel how that would cause a departure from the natural trajectory that you had going. Well, when you first heard that, you may have diverged just a little bit. It may have stung a little bit. But there was so much momentum of who you really are that was established that you just took a little tributary, but then you really got right back on track. You following us? This is really an important conversation. But let's say there you were, that's your trajectory, you are powerful, you are perfect, you are important, you are worthy, that's who you are, that's how Source feels about you. But you were born into an environment that doesn't really remember that. Now we'll come back to this and explain to you how the contrast that you are living was all part of the intention, because if you don't know what you don't want, you don't know what you do want. So you weren't off your path by having some negative emotion. You were really on your path. But let's say someone really convinced you that you were inappropriate in some way. Well, there they are now. Let's say that someone convinced you that you were inappropriate in some way. So you took another path, and then it happened again, and then it happened again, and then it happened again. We're wanting you to sort of get the sense of how your energy became split. How instead of allowing yourself to be who you really are and feel who you really are, you sort of got off on this path. Then part of the reason that you're feeling so much appreciation for what's going on here is that we stand here shining a spotlight on the trajectory that is really you. And we shine the light so bright, and we speak the word so loudly, and Jerry and Esther wrote so many books and conducted so many seminars and gave you the opportunity of listening so much that even though you may have diverged for a while, you began hearing and getting on back on path and getting back on path until you are now back in sync with who you really are. Isn't that a nice thing to know? And now, as we are moving forward, as you are moving forward in your life experience, you have the opportunity of exploring the contrast, but from that place of powerful resonance. We're going to take a segment of refreshment. We're going to have a conversation with the people next door and let them know that if they will turn theirs down, we will turn ours down, so that we are not competing for sound. It's a really good time for a segment of refreshment.
I have one more question. Can I
Maybe
continue?
later. Maybe later. Good time for it.